These are the mysterious ruins of Puma Punku, nearly 13,000 feet in the Altiplano of Bolivia.
Evidence that something extraordinary happened at Puma Punku is in front of our very eyes.
High in the Bolivian Andes sits Puma Punku, an ancient ruin carved with such precision that modern engineers admit it shouldn't exist. Blocks weighing over 100 tons are sliced with perfect 90-degree angles. Yet history tells us the builders only used stone hammers and bronze chisels over 1,500 years ago. For generations, experts have argued over how it was achieved, or if we're even asking the right questions. So, researchers did something no one had tried before. They fed every known scan, photograph, and measurement of Puma Punku over 12 terabytes of data into a cutting-edge artificial intelligence. The result shocked even the skeptics, because not only did the AI recreate the site, it revealed something far darker hiding in its design.
Archaeologists are baffled by what Puma Punku was, how it looked.
Why Puma Punku shouldn't exist, yet it does. To truly understand why researchers are so rattled by what our AI reconstruction just uncovered, you first need to understand just how baffling Puma Punku already was before technology got involved. Located on Bolivia's high-altitude Altiplano, a cold, windswept plateau sitting more than 12,000 feet above sea level, Puma Punku has puzzled experts for generations. This isn't just another Incan ruin. It's a site so advanced that even seasoned archaeologists admit it shouldn't have been possible for the people who allegedly built it over 1,500 years ago. Let's start with the most basic question. What is this place made from? The complex is constructed mostly from two types of stone, a softer reddish sandstone and a far tougher volcanic rock called andesite, which has a hardness rating of about 6 on the Mohs scale. That's just one notch below quartz. According to historical records, the Tiwanaku culture, which supposedly built Puma Punku, is said to have had stone hammers and basic bronze tools at best. Trying to carve andesite with that kind of technology isn't just difficult, it's almost absurd. And yet, somehow, they not only carved it, they engineered it. The stones are massive. The largest weighs an estimated 131 metric tons. Imagine trying to move nearly 70 full-sized family sedans stacked together. Most theories claim these blocks were hauled on wooden rollers. But there's a catch. The site sits far above the tree line where almost nothing grows. That means timber would have needed to be chopped in the lush valleys far below, then dragged uphill across inhospitable terrain just to start moving these stones. To do that dozens, maybe even hundreds of times? Suddenly, the simple explanation doesn't feel simple at all. And then comes the precision. Forget rough-cut ancient mason work. The stones at Puma Punku look machined. Many are cut at perfect 90-degree angles with surfaces so smooth they reflect light. The famous H blocks are the most astounding. Identical andesite pieces carved with complex internal right angles, recessed reliefs, T-shaped slots, and grooves that look closer to factory-manufactured parts than anything you'd expect from a pre-industrial society. Stand them side by side, and you realize they were meant to interlock, like giant stone Lego bricks. Some even have channels where molten eye-shaped bronze clamps were poured into to lock the stones together, revealing an understanding of metallurgical casting techniques not thought to exist in this region at that time. While it's not exactly true that a razor blade can't pass between the stones anymore, they've been cracked and shifted by earthquakes and centuries of weather, many of them still fit together with astonishing exactness. So the questions pile up. Where did they get the engineering knowledge? What kind of tools did they use to achieve this level of precision? How did they move stones heavier than a blue whale across unforgiving terrain? The crumbling explanations. Why historians needed help from a machine. The truth is, traditional theories about Puma Punku had quietly been falling apart for years. The mainstream explanation goes like this. The Tiwanaku people, using stone hammers and bronze chisels, slowly pounded the extremely tough andesite stones into shape. Afterward, they supposedly polished the surfaces using sand, water, and hours upon hours of manpower. In controlled experiments, researchers have shown that this can work if you're carving one small block. The problem comes when you zoom out. Knowing you can carve one perfect 90-degree corner is not the same as explaining how several hundred tons of those stones, uniform, repeating, and interlocking, were created and assembled more than 1,500 years ago. The pace of the primitive method simply fails to match the immense scale, consistency, and standardized design seen all across Puma Punku. Either these people had a workforce so enormous it would rival modern construction crews, or something about the story is missing. That gap opened the door to alternative theories, some fascinating, others fringe. One rising idea is the liquid stone or geopolymer theory, which claims Tiwanaku engineers didn't carve these stones at all. Instead, they supposedly knew a chemical process that let them dissolve andesite into a slurry, then pour it into molds like ancient concrete. This might explain the sharp angles and H-shaped blocks, if it were true. But most geologists strongly reject this. The mineralogical signatures in the stones show no signs of reformation. These blocks are natural, quarried stone. So the debate was stuck between a traditional explanation many believed was too weak, and outsider theories most believed were too wild. That's when a new approach was born, one that didn't rely on what we think they could or could not have done. Instead, a global group of researchers launched something they called the Altiplano Project, a bold attempt to let the evidence speak for itself. Teams from universities in Bolivia, Germany, Japan, and the United States spent 5 years collecting every piece of measurable data they could. They used high-resolution laser scanning to map over 150 individual stones down to the micron. They ran ground-penetrating radar to hunt for buried structures. They analyzed chemical signatures of metals left behind on clamp points. They brought in satellite imagery to try and trace lost quarry routes. Astronomers even checked whether Puma Punku aligned with star systems as part of a cosmic plan. All told, they gathered over 12 terabytes of raw information, a digital time capsule locked inside stone. This is where the technology entered. Instead of telling the AI what to find, they told it to reverse engineer the site. No preconceived theories, no human bias. Just take the data, angles, alignments, tool marks, composition, and try to rebuild Puma Punku in the most logical way possible. The goal was simple. If there was a system behind this place, a design language, a workflow, a hidden plan, maybe a machine could see what humans had missed. The AI's revelation, what the stones were really saying. Once the artificial intelligence got to work, it didn't care about reputation, ancient legends, or long-held academic theories. It didn't see stones. It saw data, vectors, chemical traces, mathematical ratios, even celestial coordinates. From that digital chaos, something extraordinary took shape. For the first time ever, Puma Punku reconstructed itself. For centuries, archaeologists have walked among collapsed walls and scattered megaliths, trying to guess what the original buildings might have looked like. But guessing comes with bias. The AI had no such problem. By comparing thousands of tool marks and matching broken fragments like pieces of the world's most difficult jigsaw puzzle, it digitally snapped everything back together. What emerged was not a simple courtyard or temple. According to the model, Puma Punku was once a massive, multi-level architectural marvel. It featured a raised platform mound, several interior chambers, gateways connected by corridors, and a complex system of channels. Some channels, it found, were carved with such precision that water would have flowed through them at specific rates, forming large, shallow pools. Positioned just right, those pools could reflect the night sky, suggesting ceremonial observations of the heavens using water as a giant mirror. But that was only the beginning. The most shocking thing the AI uncovered wasn't about appearance, it was about process. Puma Punku wasn't constructed stone by stone in a random, tribal fashion. It was manufactured. Like a modern car factory, the site depended on interchangeable, modular components. It found that 45 of the famous andesite H-blocks were carved off a single master template. The spacing of grooves, angles, and recesses was mathematically identical within thousandths of an inch. That implied standardization, almost like a factory assembly line. The AI went further to identify a core group of roughly 19 separate block types, which repeated across the entire site. Combined in different ways, these building blocks formed walls, gateways, terraces, water systems, everything. In other words, Puma Punku was not random masonry. It was a giant construction kit designed centuries before the idea of prefabrication even existed. Once it recreated the complex in three-dimensional space, the AI started running mathematical analysis across the site. That's when it found another layer, geometry. Over and over, the site revealed very particular proportions. Ratios like 1:11618, better known as the golden ratio, famous as a mathematical expression of beauty and harmony. The AI traced that ratio through doorway heights, slab widths, and even through distances between gateways. It became clear the builders didn't just want the structure to stand, they wanted it to express principles of sacred geometry. Then, the AI cross-matched the architecture against both solar and stellar alignments. Yes, as previous scholars believed, major alignments linked to the solstices and equinoxes were present. But astonishingly, the AI found more subtle alignments pointing to constellations, polar star paths, even lunar standstill positions, and, most intriguingly, positions of the night sky as seen around the 6th century AD. The conclusion was haunting. Puma Punku wasn't just a ceremonial site, it was a giant astronomical machine, a clock not for hours or days, but for centuries. And then, it got darker. Using those astronomical alignments and mathematical constants, the AI proposed that Puma Punku might not have been designed to simply observe, but to predict. By simulating movements of the heavens encoded in its layout, the software detected a repeating cycle, one that seemed to point toward rare cosmic disruptions, meteor showers, asteroid debris streams, or cometary returns that could threaten Earth. In other words, Puma Punku might have served as a warning mechanism, recording a pattern of cosmic danger and alerting future generations to these recurring celestial events. The AI then turned its attention to the destruction of the site. Traditionally, the scattered stones are attributed to earthquakes, weathering, or looting over centuries. But the debris field didn't behave like typical earthquake damage. The direction and dispersion suggested something far more violent and sudden. The AI calculated the kinetic force required to throw multi-ton stones the distances observed, and found it consistent with explosive airbursts or catastrophic flooding. Essentially, the very type of event the site might have predicted could have also destroyed it. The revelation shook researchers to their core, because it didn't require extraterrestrials or science fiction. It spoke of something far scarier, a lost human intelligence. A culture 1,500 years ago, or possibly even older, that achieved a level of engineering and astronomical understanding that rivals what we call advanced today. A culture capable of designing modular construction sites, precise prefabricated stone systems, and time-tracking devices connected to the heavens. And then they disappeared. No gradual decline, no written manuals left behind, no obvious successor is copying their methods. One day, the knowledge ends. Just silent ruins and scattered clues. A global pattern of impossible stones. What makes Puma Punku so unsettling isn't just what the AI found in Bolivia. It's that, When you zoom out, the site suddenly feels like part of a much bigger and stranger story. It's not standing alone in the pages of history. All over the world, scattered across thousands of miles and thousands of years, we find megalithic sites that share the same head-scratching qualities. Massive stones that shouldn't have been movable, precision cuts that shouldn't have been possible, and astronomical alignments that suggest whoever built them wasn't just stacking rocks, they were coding knowledge into stone. Take Machu Picchu in Peru, for example. Everyone knows it as the lost city in the clouds, built by the Inca high in the Andes Mountains. But look past the picture postcard terraces and you'll notice something familiar. Those walls of granite blocks that lock together so perfectly you can't even slip a sheet of paper between them. No mortar, no cement, just raw stone, fitting with uncanny precision. And here's the kicker. Machu Picchu was supposedly built in the 15th century, much later than Puma Punku. But the style of its stonework echoes techniques seen in far older sites, like Sacsayhuaman. Was it independent invention? Or did the Incas inherit techniques from an earlier, forgotten culture? That's the kind of uncomfortable question Puma Punku forces us to ask. Now, if you think hauling multi-ton blocks up a mountain ridge in Peru is wild, wait until you hear about Baalbek in Lebanon. Sitting on a windswept plateau in the Bekaa Valley is one of the most jaw-dropping feats of ancient construction anywhere on Earth, the massive Roman temple complex of Heliopolis. But the real stars of the show are buried in its foundations, the so-called trilithon stones. 3 enormous limestone blocks, each weighing over 800 tons, form part of the base platform. To put that into perspective, each one is heavier than a fully loaded Boeing 747. And nearby lies the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, a single block that tips the scales at over 1,000 tons. Modern cranes would struggle to lift it. Ancient engineers supposedly cut it, shaped it, and transported it. How? No one knows for sure. Some argue the Romans had clever engineering tricks. Others think the platform may predate Rome entirely. Sound familiar? Another site that doesn't quite fit the neat boxes of history. Then there's Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, which rewrites the entire timeline of human civilization. Discovered in the 1990s and dated to around 11,000 years ago, this site predates not just the pyramids, it predates writing, agriculture, and even the wheel. Yet, what do we see there? Perfectly carved T-shaped limestone pillars, some weighing up to 20 tons, are arranged in circular enclosures with detailed carvings of animals. According to textbooks, people of that era were supposed to be simple hunter-gatherers. No cities, no advanced planning, no monumental architecture. And yet, Göbekli Tepe proves otherwise, that they not only had the organization to build these circles, but also the astronomical awareness to align them with celestial events. It's almost as if knowledge appeared far earlier than we've been taught, then somehow got lost, only to resurface thousands of years later. And of course, we can't forget Egypt's pyramids. The Great Pyramid of Giza, built more than 4,000 years ago, remains one of the most studied and yet least understood monuments in history. Its base is aligned almost perfectly to true north, with an accuracy of just a fraction of a degree. The structure is built with over 2 million limestone blocks, some weighing up to 15 tons each, transported and set in place with a precision that defies the tools we're told the builders had. And here's where things get strange. The pyramid encodes mathematical constants like pi and the golden ratio, and its layout mirrors the alignment of Orion's belt in the night sky. Just like Puma Punku, the message seems to be carved in stone. This wasn't random. It was designed with purpose, knowledge, and an obsession with the cosmos. When you line up all these sites, Machu Picchu, Baalbek, Göbekli Tepe, the pyramids, and Puma Punku, a pattern starts to emerge. Different continents, different cultures, different centuries, yet the same impossible stonework. the same obsession with perfect geometry, and the same link to the heavens. Did these civilizations all stumble onto the same knowledge independently? Or are we looking at fragments of something much larger, a global legacy of lost science, scattered like breadcrumbs through time? This is where Puma Punku gets even more chilling, because, thanks to the AI reconstruction, we can now see that it wasn't just random blocks tumbled on the ground. It was a system, a planned, modular, mathematical system built with the same level of thought we see in the Great Pyramid or Göbekli Tepe. Except here, the precision and prefabrication are on another level entirely. It's as if the builders were operating in a mindset far closer to modern engineering than ancient trial-and-error stonework. And here's the hook. If sites like Machu Picchu and Baalbek raise eyebrows, Puma Punku blows the doors off the debate. Because unlike those other sites, which at least have some kind of cultural continuity, the Incas, the Egyptians, the Romans, Puma Punku doesn't fit cleanly into the timeline. The Tiwanaku may have used it, but all evidence suggests they didn't build it. So if they weren't the architects, who was? That's the uncomfortable truth the AI dropped in researchers' laps. Puma Punku might not just be another mystery ruin. It might be the missing piece of a global puzzle, proof that there was once a civilization capable of things we can barely explain today, and that their fingerprints are scattered across the world in the form of impossible stones. The new reality and the bigger question. If the artificial intelligence reconstruction is even partly correct, then Puma Punku is no longer just an interesting ruin tucked away in the Bolivian highlands. It becomes something else entirely, not simply the shattered remains of a culture, but the fossilized imprint of a forgotten science. Think about that for a second. Those scattered stones might not just be collapsed walls. They could be the last surviving record of knowledge that rivaled or even surpassed our own. And that's the part that rattles people the most. Because this isn't just about construction skills. The more we look at Puma Punku, the more it feels like we're staring into a mirror. One that reflects back not only what ancient people achieved, but also what they may have feared. Maybe these stones are not ruins at all. Maybe they are a message. Here's the chilling question. If they were that advanced, then where did they go? How do you go from building one of the most precise architectural complexes on Earth to vanishing without a trace? For decades, the standard explanation was simple. Puma Punku was built by the Tiwanaku culture around the 6th century AD. But the more evidence piles up, the less that story fits. The AI analysis suggests something very different. That the Tiwanaku may have inherited Puma Punku, not created it. Archaeologists have noticed a strange layering at the site. Pottery and ritual remains linked to the Tiwanaku often sit on top of the megalithic foundations, not within them. That suggests they came later, using the site as a ceremonial center, but not necessarily understanding or building its original core. So, if not the Tiwanaku, then who? And more importantly, what happened to them? The most straightforward explanation is also the most brutal. Nature itself may have ended them. The Bolivian Altiplano is no stranger to earthquakes, floods, and violent weather shifts. Geological surveys show that the ground around Puma Punku has been rocked by major seismic activity multiple times in the last 2,000 years. The strange scattering of massive blocks doesn't look like slow erosion or casual dismantling. It looks sudden, almost explosive. Some researchers point to evidence of massive flooding in the region. Ancient shorelines around nearby Lake Titicaca suggest water levels once rose far higher than today, possibly due to catastrophic meltwater floods from receding glaciers. Imagine a sudden surge of water sweeping through the plain, tearing apart walls, flipping stones that weighed more than 100 tons, and drowning the people who lived there. Others argue for something even more violent, a cosmic impact. Around the year 536 AD, historical records across the world describe a mysterious dark age triggered by a global dust cloud. The Byzantine historian Procopius wrote that the sun gave forth its light without brightness. Tree ring data show a sudden cooling, consistent with a massive volcanic eruption or cometary airburst. Could Puma Punku's destruction tie into that same window of catastrophe? The AI analysis even suggested the scattering of blocks resembled the blast wave of an airburst, like the famous Tunguska event of 1908 in Siberia, when a space rock exploded in the atmosphere and flattened thousands of square miles of forest. If Puma Punku really was designed as a cosmic observatory, a way to track dangerous celestial cycles, then here's the unsettling thought. Maybe the very disaster they were warning about finally arrived. But maybe it wasn't just brute force destruction. Maybe the people themselves played a role in their own disappearance. Imagine a society where knowledge is centralized in the hands of a priestly or elite class. The engineers, astronomers, and stoneworkers might have been a small, protected group, the keepers of knowledge. That makes sense if you're trying to control a population or preserve secrets. But it's also a dangerous game. If a single class holds all the keys, then when they vanish, through war, plague, or political collapse, the knowledge goes with them. History is full of these moments. Think of the Library of Alexandria, burned in antiquity. Thousands of years of mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and philosophy were reduced to ash in a matter of days. Or consider the Mayan scribes. When their cities fell, their glyphic writing system was almost completely lost, and only fragments remain today. If Puma Punku's builders had centralized their science in the same way, it might explain why no one else carried it forward. The Tiwanaku may have inherited the stones, but not the secrets, like someone stumbling upon a crashed spaceship but not knowing how to fly it. Another possibility is migration. Maybe they weren't wiped out, maybe they scattered. Survivors could have carried pieces of their knowledge into new regions, planting seeds that later grew into myths, technologies, or building styles elsewhere. When we compare Puma Punku to other megalithic sites around the world, Egypt, Lebanon, Turkey, Peru, the similarities feel eerie. Perfectly cut stones, massive blocks are transported in ways we can't explain. Astronomical alignments coded into architecture. Could these be the echoes of a once unified knowledge system, fragmented across continents after some ancient disaster? Some Andean legends speak of Viracocha, a bearded godlike figure who appeared after a great flood and taught survivors arts like farming and building. Was he a mythologized memory of the last engineers of Puma Punku? If so, maybe those survivors became wanderers, passing their knowledge along until it was diluted into folklore. It's a tantalizing idea that the out-of-place precision we see at sites like Baalbek or Göbekli Tepe isn't a coincidence, but the faint fingerprints of a lost world civilization, one that fractured and faded, leaving only scattered whispers in stone. This leads us to a bigger, scarier possibility. Maybe history isn't a straight line of progress. Maybe it's a cycle. We like to think of human history as a neat ladder. Cavemen, then farmers, then cities, then spaceflight. But what if it's more like a sawtooth? Sharp rises, catastrophic falls, and forgotten peaks of brilliance. Archaeologists already admit that the timeline keeps getting pushed back. Göbekli Tepe forced us to recognize that organized religion, astronomy, and monumental construction existed 6,000 years earlier than we thought. The discovery of advanced metallurgy in prehistoric India pushed the story of complex chemistry back thousands of years. What if Puma Punku is yet another reminder that we've hit these peaks before and lost them? This also explains the silence. Why no tools, no records, no manuals? Because civilizations can collapse hard. Think about our own. If modern society suddenly fell tomorrow, no electricity, no internet, no industry, how long would it take before skyscrapers crumbled, satellites fell, and our achievements were nothing more than rusted ruins? 1,000 years from now, would survivors be able to rebuild a jet engine, or would they be carving wood and stone? Puma Punku may be the proof that this cycle has already played out before. And here lies the paradox. The AI reconstruction solves one mystery. Yes, Puma Punku was engineered, standardized, and scientifically aligned. But in solving that, it opens an even deeper mystery. How can such brilliance vanish so completely? A civilization capable of embedding astronomical cycles into stone should have left behind metal tools, workshops, or at least written records. But aside from the ruins themselves, there is only silence. That silence is deafening. It reminds us that civilizations are fragile, knowledge can be erased, and all that remains are enigmatic monuments for future generations to puzzle over. A monument or a warning? This is where speculation turns darkest. What if Puma Punku isn't just a ruin, but a warning? The AI found alignments that may correspond to long cosmic cycles, cycles of cometary returns, solar flares, or catastrophic climate shifts. If the builders really were tracking these, then maybe the site was designed not just for ceremony, but for survival. Imagine a giant, stone-encoded warning system. Watch the skies. This will happen again. And here's the uncomfortable thought. If they were right, then maybe their own end wasn't just tragedy, it was inevitability. And if these cycles repeat, then what does that mean for us? Are we standing in the path of the same forces they tried to warn about? In the end, Puma Punku does more than rewrite a chapter of the past. It opens a mirror onto the future. It reminds us that brilliance does not guarantee survival, that even the most extraordinary knowledge can vanish overnight if disaster, neglect, or arrogance takes it down. History may not be a steady climb. It may be a repeating cycle of rise, brilliance, collapse, and silence. And if that's true, then we have to ask ourselves, what cycle are we in now? Are we rising? Are we at our peak? Or are we teetering at the edge of another fall? Also, another question lingers. What knowledge did they have that we've forgotten? What warnings lie encoded in their geometry, waiting for us to decode them? And most importantly, will we listen in time? Or are we, like them, just another brief flash in the endless rise and fall of human history? What do you think happened to the builders of Puma Punku? Was it a natural disaster? A societal collapse? Or something else entirely? Share your theories in the comments below. We'd love to hear your perspective. And if you enjoyed this journey into one of history's greatest enigmas, please give this video a like. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the mysteries that rewrite our past. Thank you for watching.